going to be building layouts from the editor. Then I'm gonna write everything that I built, and I'm gonna try to put inside of a function. I changed my mind over the way that I was trying to do things because I thought that it's not worth to spend a bunch of time trying to create a class that creates a layout that subdivides the space to create different docs on the layout because it's just too much work, and it's easier to think about a layout as a fixed thing. So I think it's probably going to be better to build the layout from the editor, and then once I build the layout, put everything into a function and uh, build different layouts like that, and then I'm gonna have different functions that have standard layouts that I can start from. And there's also, I realized that it's kind of annoying the way that user interface in general is annoying for me to work because I don't like that much. Like spending a bunch of time trying to figure out the margins and stuff like that. It's very annoying and very frustrating. So, and based on the way that they did Godot, the design, there are a lot of situations I think where it's not going to be very easy to. You can't really split. I found a way there that they were able to create what I was thinking about doing. I think is here, which is just a way to be able to create layouts based on the split container only. So a split container and panel, and you create different boxes. This is basically what I was thinking about doing C++ class that creates this, which is a tree structure that divides the first initial space into different docs. And maybe I'll try to do this at some point. But I think the way that I was trying to go about it is probably not gonna, it's not very good. This other way of manually creating on the editor and then creating the function is probably better. And then if I want, I could probably create a way in the same way that they did on the editor, where you can click here, I think, and then you can change the dock position. So I can create a class that what I'm thinking about doing is just putting standard names for nodes to make it easier to think about. So like I can put this icon, left icon tab or something like that, the name of this, and then the name of the other ones as well as something that is easier to remember. And if I forget, then obviously I can build the initial page from the initial string from the code, then open from the editor and then see which is which, and then I can create an algorithm that just traverses the tree, selects the node based on the name, and then switches the doc based on another thing, which would probably be a tab container. So I can put the logic to swap different parts on a different component, and I think that's probably gonna be easier to do. But obviously, I think like it's not ideal. The other way would be better, but yeah, because here as well, like what I realized is that you can't limit the size. Like you can get around these problems, but to create a generic thing that creates the tree is very difficult to think about. So I'm just gonna try to create from the editor here. And I was thinking about looking into the other. Yeah, I changed the code there, so I'm gonna have to run again. But on the other project, I'm creating the layout from the editor. So I think I'm gonna create. There is another one that I created manually, so maybe I'll go because the question that I was before streaming that I had here, that I'm thinking about. There's two different things. One is the size of the overall thing that I'm not really sure how it's determined. The initial size here. Because this is flexible, but the lines for the initial one are not, I think. And these are the anchors. So you can, based on the tutorials that I watched there, you can change the project settings the way that it expands based on the window. And this was the settings that they recommended. So we put canvas item and expand. I guess it's here. So it's the viewport width and height, maybe. So height is probably the big one, and width like this. So I'm trying to figure out a way to. So the design that I'm thinking about is you always have the tab. I'm trying to create an IDE now. Same structure of an IDE where like I have a sidebar here with icons in the same way that they have here to change whatever is displayed there. And then on the other one I have uh, either a text file or the file system or a physics component. And then on the top here, I'll have these menus here of file selection and stuff like that. So yeah, if you change the settings there, it changes what happens when you shrink the thing and when you expand. So what I'm not sure how to go about doing is these two parts here, because I want to make sure that they are always like complementing each other. That makes sense. So maybe it's the V box. I think I tried to do this before, I think, but it messed it up, the thing there. Each box. I think you have to put this one. So this sets the anchor for everything. And the anchor determines how the item moves as you increase and decrease the size of the window. So a lot of tutorials they recommend to put the anchor at the top right if you have an element that is on the top right, and the top left if you have an element that is on the top left. Because then when you move the window, it moves the item in relationship to the corner. But from the editor, they select this one, I think, for the main menu. But I'm not really sure. So I'm thinking split container. Yeah, so this one has 3. So maybe I should put a container for them. It's gonna be very frustrating in the beginning, and then hopefully it's gonna become better. Sure. So yeah, this is the problem. It fucks up everything. Hmm. So how can I make this work? I don't understand why it's not in the correct. Maybe if I decrease the size, could be because of this. Yeah, I think now it worked. No, still. Basically, once you fit the this stuff inside of this container, because I'm trying to separate into two different sections: the tab in the top and the stuff that is gonna be on the bottom. To have the thing here and the rest. And then I'm thinking about trying to put them inside of the other so that they are always in the same thing. I don't understand why it's not going over. So why is the height different? It doesn't make any sense. Maybe if I put the control and then I put this stuff here. Maybe it's because of the anchor. Hmm. Problem is now that I'm not seeing the icon there. Maybe here. Oh, it's here. It's very hard to see. Here. Or this one makes more sense to put top left. But I want to know how can I make sure that is always it always takes the main size there. Gotcha. Specify. I've seen what is saying there to do, but I don't remember which one it is or how to find that. There is a place there where you can select your shrink or fit or whatever. What's this? Shit. Sure. You just, I know, I think that these types of containers should have. So maybe some other thing that I should change here. I think it was this thing here. So let me see. Oh, it's different because so I guess I have to change from anchor to position. Hmm. Maybe the VBox container doesn't have this. I think it was the panel that I selected. I think that ChatGPT is talking about this stuff here. Split containers probably gonna be different, I think. So I think that some of the containers you can only set the anchor and not the. It kind of sucks, to be honest, because I'm not really sure. So maybe there isn't a way to do this. Because the problem is I'm not really sure about the size of the whole thing. So what I wanted to say there is to make this always take the whole space. So I guess maybe I should use another container on this thing here instead of a control or something like that. Also can see shits here. Let's have this. So maybe they have to be on another container so that I make sure that they are always the same, or they have the same, like there's no uh, like space between them. And this is the problem, I think, because if I change I don't know what's the relationship between the size that of this window here and the pretty sure if it's resolution. I'm not really sure if this size is gonna be dynamic or it's gonna be fixed in the way that I. So if I put this size here, it's always gonna take the full space of the thing. I assume that it will, but not 100% sure. And now it seems like way too big as well for the whole thing. Or maybe this is fine. But there's a space here. This is an issue. So that's the problem. Maybe doing this fixes the other problem. Yeah. You put margin, you just go on the theme, I think theme constants. Yeah, here. Let's put 20 everything. And now it looks really weird there. It's just the size of this thing. think this one, or maybe one of these has a minimum. I think it's probably the bottom has a minimum uh, size that I put there, but I think it's probably not because of maybe it's because of the size of the margin. I guess I have to decrease the margin. Let's put down. This is the issue though, is that so I have to spend time thinking about how to make sense of this and how to figure out what is going on. Because if I so the idea that I have is to write everything down and then I'm gonna create the thing on the from code. But if I create from code, I'm gonna have to pass these values here. So like I'm not really sure. I don't know how to make sense of the values. It's like if I change the resolution there, is it gonna change the size of the window? Let's say I put here. Yeah, now it's on the other point here, I think. Whereas the initial window is the size of the thing. But this is the problem, is because I want the sizes should be regardless of the window size. So how can I ask this? Because if I put a fixed value there, then it forces me to choose a size, and I want the proportions to be the same regardless of the size. I think on the editor they did based on a scale macro that they put, and in the beginning is 1, but it probably changes when you resize the window. So they multiply the values of everything, so the size increases. Yeah, I think this one makes sense to have this one. This one's probably very easy. Let's try this one. So maybe this should be a VBox container. Let's change type. Box. There we go. Finally. So there's a bunch of problems. Because the issue now is that I can't change the. I can put the minimum size and. Right, but I can change the. I think there's one. It's kind of hard to clarify like what questions to ask. To fix this, I might have to spend a bunch of time looking into the source code to understand more how it works. This is not intuitive at all to think about the way that it works here. Because the issue is that like each container depends. I guess it's very similar to the browser as well. Because each container is it's similar but it's different actually because on the browser you have the HTML, so HTML is separate from the JavaScript code. But obviously, so the HTML would be like the tree data structure that determines the structure of the nodes. So I guess it is very similar. But because I'm not really sure about how each node is going to impact each children, it's very hard to think about because then like if I put this as children of this, it's going to force certain widths and heights, and then like I don't have flexibility to change whatever you want to put inside. That's the problem. So my concern is that if I put like one node here, then like later on, because like I'm designing this to work as a layout that I can just change based on the data. So if later on I decide to put a component here and then, but the component was designed outside of the layouts, then it might fuck up the layout of the component because it's inserted on a different node. So this is one of the issues, and the other issue is that I don't know about the size here. Like I don't understand how I'm supposed to. I guess like the way that you usually do it is by selecting like a main size for the thing you're developing, and then making the values depend based on that, and then on other resolutions it just decreases based on whatever you put on the project settings there. I assume that's how it works. Also, it probably selects the. I want to make it uh, this resolution here because I think that this is the most common one. It might be 180. So I'm gonna ask what is the most common. But it might be better to make it smaller than the window resolution because obviously you can always make it like expand the window, but I'm not really sure. So the other question is if I select one of the, like if I select this one and I design everything with the specific values for this one, if it's gonna mess up uh, if they have another resolution. So I think probably like these parts here is probably fine. So I start with the H box. So I start with the panel. The panel covers everything. Then I put an H box to split the main parts on the tab here. And here I'm not really sure about which one to use as the parents. But like this would be a container that has a box of whatever is gonna show up on the middle. But I think that's not how they did it on the editor. So maybe the best thing to do is just to study the editor codes and then try to figure out. It's not intuitive at all to me, like the sizes and the relationship between the containers. So maybe it is different than HTML and CSS. But I do think like the containers would work as if like you're using Flexbox, I guess, or grid container on the browser. So maybe I can ask ChatGPT like the similarities between both. It's 1920 to 180 or to 1080. 1080. I guess here is determined by the minimum width here. So probably this is already correct. The main part is correct. We just have to figure out how to. So maybe here I put a vertical box instead. It has to be a horizontal box. And I remember from a tutorial that there's something about the stretch ratio here of the sizes. So I think if we expand this, yeah, there you go. So this is what I wanted. Problem is that I still think that there's a gap between them, but it might be because of the margin. No. So what is the gap? Maybe it doesn't matter that much, I think. This is fine. So what I'm thinking about, so I'm gonna write, I have to write down everything. Maybe we should create another, I should probably create another project and like uh, have one where I create manually and then the other one where I test the, but I'm probably gonna use the same one that I was using to build the code with the editor layout. So what I'm gonna do is just write down. So I'm gonna write down both the structure that I have here. I'm gonna change the names as well. So the structure and then all the stuff that you have to set there on the properties to make this the way that it is. So let me think about this. Because I need to look into the editor as well. Oh, the button here for the icon, I'm using a normal button. I'm just setting I found this website. Oh, this is the cycle that I'm thinking about. This one with SPGs. And what I'm gonna do is just download a bunch of them and I'm gonna put them on a folder that I have there for icons. So on this folder here. And then I think it makes sense for like you have to specify the path from the root of the project. Because obviously for each project you're gonna have different assets. So it doesn't make sense to put the assets on the same folder because then I think you can't really, or maybe you can actually, because when it generates for the editor it's probably somewhere on the source code, the icons, or is on the cache folders that they put there. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if it makes sense to put on the. I was thinking about putting on a folder on the source code, and then always using those icons as like standard icons. But then I don't know. The problem is that when you try to select here, because the way that I did is just by clicking on load. I didn't try this one. This one's probably the ones used or the ones that are inside of the roots of the project. But if you click on load, it only allows you to search from the root of the project, I think. So, but I didn't try to put a path here. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go through any path you put there. So this would be the problem with using icons from the source code, because then I would only be able to set them from the code, from C++ code. So I think what I'm gonna do is just put the icons on the icon folder, and then just copy paste whatever. Maybe I create subfolders, and then for each project I just put all the icons on a subfolder, the common ones. But yeah, this doesn't matter that much. So let me think about what should I do now. Also, for the project settings, you need to. So the way that it works is that after you click there on project settings and you set the values, it's going to save them on the project.godot file. So all you have to do is to search for the things here. So this, and I'm gonna put there on the. 'Cause I think all the projects that I do are gonna have this thing here. So I'm just gonna put there on before everything. And I'm pretty sure I already used this. So you just pass sets and then you put the path for the, and you have to specify. So here would be display probably. So display, and then you pass the path, and then you set, put the value probably. So I'm gonna set all of this there on the headless before I run the project. I'll be right back. Uh, After, when I'm back, I'm gonna think about what to do, but I'm probably gonna look into the layout from the editor and then come back to this one and then write all the stars and getters and the state and try to recreate this node from code, this thing from code. So I'll be right back. It's gonna be a pain in the ass in the beginning to make this work. So I'm gonna test to see what happens if I try to put uh codes elements there. This will be 50. Trying to find if it's possible to fit the height again on here. Obviously, I want to make it the same size as the parents one. But the problem is if I put this size, then I think it's gonna mess it up there, but maybe not. Yeah, this is the issue. So I think that this kind of stuff you probably do with you would do it with GDScript, but I should probably create another class and then just put an event or something. It is very annoying though. So this puts the code there. This is another issue. Not really sure if it's the same because yeah, like here it's kind of different because I don't remember. I don't want to look into how to put the stuff on the left now, but I think it's gonna be basically the same way that it works. That when you move this, it doesn't move the code. But actually, maybe when it was the other way around, it was moving the code. Yeah, I do think that when it was the other way around, it does move the code. So maybe it's just the same. Works in the same way, I think. Because when you put, so let me see if I put it bigger than the thing. Yeah, it doesn't change. So I guess I have to put it on another container and then make the other container expand. 'Cause it's probably not possible to. Maybe here is either, but if I okay, so if I put full, then it. So now let me test to see what happens. Oh, there is another panel here. But it's supposed to be like this, I think. The other one is supposed to be. So I guess this is the one that I changed there. So I want to see what happens if I decrease the split lower than the size of the code there. See if it's gonna cover up the codes or what's gonna happen. I guess it depends on the way that you structure the. So I should probably change the panel order because here I'm splitting this one into this one and then I'm splitting this one. I think it should be the other way around probably, where like this panel was supposed to be split in two. Maybe if I just change the. I think the other way around is probably what I was thinking about. It makes more sense to split the code with the other parts and then leave the file or whatever is gonna show there as its own thing. I think that makes more sense. Hmm. So what determines the size here? I think that the when I expand or contract on this one, it makes more sense for this one to be fixed. I want to see this. Yeah, so it does cover up the thing. Nice. So let me see if I do the other way around. Put this one here. And this also doesn't have minimum. Hmm. So this one makes sense, have true. And then this one should be on top. Yeah, now I think it makes more sense. Let's see. Yeah, so that way the other one is independent. But when I do this, it's kind of weird, but it doesn't matter that much, I think. But I wonder if there's a way to keep this one fixed when I move this one. I think that would be better. But I guess it depends on the size of the. Yeah, because I think when you move this one, it's gonna move the entire thing, and that's why it moves the panel in the beginning. But if you put the split container outside, then it doesn't work, I think. Trying to see if there's a way to. The other annoying thing is that like you can only set the minimum size. Mm. So maybe this solves what I was gonna say. That ideally you have like an initial size and then you have a minimum size. This is much better. It makes all my sense to start like wide and then allow for contracting. And now it seems that it is working. Yeah, but if I move this one, it's gonna move the other one. That's the problem. So what I want is when I move this one for the line here to be the same, but I think it's probably not possible. Only with the nodes, you have to put some script or something. But I think it doesn't matter that much as well. Yeah, so on the bottom we need to have something as well for the command line. Or you need to have a margin or something, because if it's right on the bottom, then it's kind of bad. Hey, what's up? I'm trying to create an ID as like something similar to an ID page where an ID layout so that I can put on code. So I'm creating the layout from the editor here, and I want to have something similar to the structure that they have here, where you have this stuff on the top, and then you have something like the file system, the code, and then I'm gonna put something else on the side. Then like after I create this scene from the editor, I'm going to write down all the structure here and write down the setters and getters, the functions. And then I'm gonna pass this to a C++ function. And then from the C++ function, I'm gonna recreate the scene from scratch so that in the beginning of every scene I have this. If I want to use a scene like this on an application, I can just call the function from the beginning and build the entire thing from code. But it's very frustrating in the beginning because I don't know uh, the like it's not intuitive to me at all the way that they created this, and also because using interface is just annoying in general. So it's kind of in the beginning it's kind of annoying to figure out or to make sense of how to put each thing. But I think this is probably a good starting point. The way that I so the idea that I have is on the beginning is gonna be just the structure, and then from the code I'm gonna be able to, based on the names that I put here, I'm gonna be able to put whatever I want in the entry points of these nodes here. So I wouldn't have this code edit thing. I would just have the structure, and then I find the node based on the name, and then I create another subtree that is gonna either a subtree or another element, like the code edit nodes, and then I put the whatever custom element inside of the thing. So this would be like docs, and then from that point I create the functionality of that part. I guess so like what happens if I delete this? So it stays the same. So I think I'm gonna save this. The most annoying is remember. So I'm gonna write down so the first thing to do that I have to do is to put the setters and getters in the beginning, I think. Well, also I have to I'm gonna delete all this stuff here that I was doing, because this is, I was trying to translate the project there, this project here that they created, because this one is using a plugin, GDScript plugin, and it allows you to set the docs. So it's a element that they created. So I was trying to move this to C++, so I'm going to delete there because I'm probably not gonna do this anymore. And maybe because yeah, I was gonna clone this, but since I'm not logged in to GitHub, I think I'm just gonna close. But it might be useful to have this at some point. It's called dockable container. So the feedback loop cycle that I'm trying to, I have to keep this in mind. I'm gonna try to, because everything's gonna be a cycle, so I'm gonna try to increase the frequency because obviously so far I haven't done anything, so I'm not sure how it's gonna go. But the way that I'm thinking is gonna go is you create the layout from the editor, then you create a pass the layout to C++ function, then you go back to that. You create the scene from the code, go back to the editor, write down the names of the nodes that are the entry points of the doc. I think I'm probably gonna, because the way that I think that the dockable thing there that they created and the way that I was thinking about it as well is making the docs to be, I guess I can do it based on a hash map. I think that probably the best way to do it is you create a hash map with the name of the node and the position of the doc on the screen, so that is easier to remember. And then based on that structure, you figure out how to, like the entry points of the docs of the main thing. So the layout creates the structure in the beginning, and then once I create that, I have another. So maybe I'm probably gonna make this like a standard thing, maybe. So I have to think about the top there. That's what I'm gonna do now. I'm probably gonna. It's kind of hard to think about this as well because, like, I was thinking about making this as a standard thing, but I think obviously it's gonna depend on the application. I was thinking about creating a component that encapsulates the tab here because I'm probably gonna use this on every thing of an application, so it's like a navigation bar. So I probably have to. It's probably better to think about this first, then I think about the dockable thing. So the way that I'm imagining is that I'm gonna have a tab here that is gonna be. It's gonna have functionality to change the positions of the docs, and then I assign based on the node name of each one and the position. It allows it to change. So let me delete this stuff. So I think before I do this stuff here, I'm gonna search for examples of this. So I'm just gonna set the projects, and then I have to think about whether. But I'm probably just gonna leave it like this. So I have to set this project settings here from the beginning, and it's gonna be based on the project Godot file. Also, let me close this stuff. So this was the code from the other application, so I'm not gonna use anymore. Yeah, each node has a string name that is equivalent to the name of the node. It makes sense to use enums, but the problem is that it's gonna be different for every application. So like if you think about, like, it's harder to remember the integer because it's not clear how to encode the position of the nodes with the layout structure because for each scene is going to be different. So like, an integer is easier to think about as a sequence on an array, for example. So if you created a standard where you always like start as with the integer as the node that is on the left, then it might make sense, but it's more confusing. So if you make it based on the name of the nodes, it makes it easier to think about in your mind when you're doing the code. because then it allows you to link the name of that doc with the entry point. So for example, here I can put the name as icon tab, let's say. Then on the code, whenever I see icon tab, it's going to be a lot easier to remember that is this entry point here. And then what I would do is from the code, on the icon tab, probably I'm not going to do much. But I would, on other situations, let's say for example, I want to add different icons here. I would just search for the node on the scene from the root of the scene on the layout, because I'm going to create the layout on the function. So this would be an entry point function, for example, for a layout. And then I'm going to call these functions at the beginning of every scene. So this function is going to create the root node of the layout, which is the first node on the scene. And then I'm going to return the root node from here. Then from this root node, what I can do here is search entry points from root, and then I can add more stuff to them, to the entry points. So in that case there, I could search icon tab root, for example, with root node find, and then just pass the name of that I put there. I think icon tab. Then this would give me, it would make it a lot easier to think about, because I would get basically this node here from the code there based on the name. I think it's easier. I think it's find name or something. No, find child, I think. I have on other parts that I did there. Find child based on the pattern. Just the name, I think. And then, is either find child or something else? I think it's on the manager that I did this. Yeah, find child, then you pass the name. Then here, if I wanted to, I can just create the two different nodes. The margin with the button, and then set the values, and then just add them as children of this one. And then at the end, it would allow me to save everything. Then after I call this function, it returns the root of the scene the first time. And here I'm looping over all the scenes of the project based on the director of the project and the scene path. And I always put this class here to serialize the signals, which I haven't tested yet. This is another thing that I just realized that I'm probably gonna have to change, because the way that I'm doing is based on the name of the nodes as well. So I'm resetting the names of the nodes. So I'm probably gonna have to change this class so that when I set names of nodes, it updates the signal, or the caching of the signal, the properties of the class that are gonna cache the signal connection. But basically, using this function here, it allows me to pass the sync path and this pattern that I created to indicate that I'm gonna add the node to the roots of the scene, which would be basically this node here. And then at the end there, based on other patterns that I created, it allows me to create the whole scene from the code in the beginning. And then what I can do is from that point is I can add anything I want from the editor as well, and it's not gonna change anything because of the logic that I put there, hopefully. Like, doesn't matter how many times I run through the code, because it's never gonna add additional nodes. It's only gonna refresh. If the node already exists, it updates. If it doesn't, then it adds to the scene. So I can keep creating other subtrees, and based on the endpoints that I create on the initial layouts, I can change the states of the docs. But it is a compromise, kind of. But I think that the type container thing is probably gonna be, I should make something standard like that, where you have a tab container that keeps track of the name of the nodes, which are the entry points of the layout, and the position, something that should remind the or to make it easier to associate the position where they are on the screen. So like it would probably map with like an enum mapping to the string name of the node, probably. Then from that, uh, you put the logic to be able to change based on the whatever logic you put there to change the elements if you want. So maybe it would be in enum and then the names as well, like both. Caesar definitely decided because it would be a bit more process to search for strings, but still does not really matter. So your approach will have more benefit. Yeah. It is kind of annoying too. But I think it's just like with anything in the beginning, it's kind of annoying to think about all this stuff, and hopefully it gets easier as like I become better at dealing with this stuff. But it is kind of annoying in the beginning. So I was gonna put the oh here I would put a check as well. So you have to check obviously to see if this thing was able to put the node. So based on like so first I create the pattern. I create the structure from the editor, and then here I'm just gonna set the code's gonna be a reflection of the editor. So I'm just gonna set the name, the same names that I put there, and I have to write them down. But then I think this way it is kind of like a compromise, but it's probably better because there isn't too much. There's probably not too much variance in the initial layout structure of a page. The variance is gonna come mostly from whatever happens inside of the docs of the page. So I think it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a bunch of time figuring out a way to dynamically create the docs. But I'm not 100% sure about this. Like it's kind of like a compromise now. I think like kind of forced to do it like this because of the way that it works on Godot to structure the layouts. But yeah, because I think that's it's just the nature of the layouts. Like, they probably structured the way that they did because of the nature. It's just annoying because of the amount of variance you have on different window sizes and pixel ratios and all this garbage. That makes it very annoying too. So they probably structure everything in a way that it makes it easier to think about the alignment of everything. But because of that, it becomes more complex to think about how to create a structure that allows you to create the resizable or create dynamic docs. And on the editor there, they did a fixed thing, I think. So here, I was gonna search for the examples when you set the value. Also, can use a macro. I want to see maybe if I search for the macro. I think this way is probably fine. I'm gonna try to set explicitly there. So this is for setting the values. Let me just copy the way that they did here. So as far as I understand right now, the viewports. So this is when you want to set the values on the project settings for the current project. So you pass the path to the thing. So you need to pass accordingly to the project Godot file. So here you have to put display first. If you want to change something on the application, we put the application. So basically put the name of the section, then you put the name of the thing. And this here is generated whenever you click on project settings. Then you change the values here. It's gonna write down there. So if you want to set from the code, you just call the project settings, then you put the path here. Put the path, and then you put the value you want to change, and then you put the property you want to change, the setting you want to change, and then you put the value, and it puts 4 here, and just copy this stuff. Yeah, this is the thing that I don't understand. I don't know how it works. The thing is, I couldn't find tutorials as well. So, like, most of the tutorials, people just build the stuff. Like, so one of the tutorials I found, the guy explained that, like, this settings here that I put is to determine what happens when you resize the window. So the viewport size is the initial size of the window here. So that would be like this settings here. So the size of the initial window of the application. And then these stretch modes here are what happens when you change the size of the initial window. So I think that the way that it usually works is that you just select arbitrarily like standard size that you want the thing to have. And then depending on the monitor that the people have is gonna change based on the modes of the stretch mode here. So you make all the values in relationship to the size, initial viewport size, but it would obviously be better if the sizes from the nodes could be relative to the viewport. So this is kind of the issue that I'm not really sure like how to deal with, because based on the way that I'm trying to do here, I'm gonna have to set the values based. There are some values where you have to specify the exact amount of the size of the thing, the node. So this is the reason why I'm putting this here, because then like it is another compromise, but it's gonna allow me to make sure that all the projects always have the same setting. So I can put the hard-coded values for the nodes there, and it's gonna look the same as if I'm building from the editor. But I'm not really sure how to do this. You use keep as well if you want to keep an aspect ratio. Yeah, but the problem with the keep is that I think you were saying here, it creates some black sides there, some parts based on, yeah, so if you shrink, depending on the way you shrink, it becomes black there. So the one that the guy recommended is the one that I was using there, where it always fills it expands with the window size, and then it doesn't become pixelated also. It just keeps the proportion, I think that, yeah. But those kinds of things I think that they are like kind of annoying. No, they are very annoying regardless of what you're gonna do, because it's just a problem with like monitor sizes and stuff like that. It's the same thing on the browser, the CSS and stuff like that. It's very annoying to deal with. Responsive design, so. And this one, I'm not really sure how it's gonna. So either I put the. Maybe it doesn't work. Either I put like this or I put a double string there, probably. Oh, I have to put display as well. Display. Then I have to put the values. Oh no, I'm putting the thing on the wrong place actually. So this would be a canvas item there. Expand, yeah, I think that case of an editor, it is probably. I'm not really sure for games as well, like what would be the best. I think most applications, they. Yeah, I don't remember the last time that I've seen an application where you have like a black space, but I also don't play games, so maybe there are many. So the other way to set the settings is by using the macro, but I think the other way is fine, probably. It's gonna be the same thing. Just an easier way, I think, if you use the macro. But I don't understand why it's not the default as well. So maybe there is a point to using the other ones, but yeah. So let me think about this. I think now the best thing to do is to look into the editor code to see how they do it. I think that one of the things that is very confusing is the functionality of the components. Okay, so it's gonna be. Let me think about this. So obviously, so one thing that I have to write is the structure, and the other thing is gonna be. So maybe I should change the names first. Should select names for each thing. Yo, thanks for the follow. Yo, no problem, man. Thank you. See ya. So I think it's probably better to look into the editor now, I don't know. Or look into the editor layout first. Because I think one of the things that is confusing me is how it's gonna work for connecting. Because I know that there can be a massive problem, not a massive problem, but a problem with uh, not being able to connect. Or like there might be certain values, especially specifically the pop-up menu that I'm thinking about now because it's the one that I had a problem before, which is probably the one that is responsible for creating this thing here. So if I can't set the values on runtime or set the values on the cache there, I set the values when I create the scene and then cache the values so that they still work on runtime. Then I'm thinking about like how I'm gonna deal with this kinds of things and how is the connection of everything's gonna look like. So I think that the most challenging one is this one because it really depends on. I'm not really sure if it should be parts of the layouts or not. So probably I should look into the editor and then uh, remember how they do this stuff here, and then just do a similar thing. But I might probably the solution is create another class. So create another class. Then inside of that class, I add the values based on. So I make it based on the properties of the class, which stuff. And the way that I think it works, but it's gonna be annoying if I do it. The way that I think it works is that it's based on signals. So the pop-up menu just has the name of the thing and the code to create the structure of what happens when you click. So it has the options and stuff like that. But then after you click one of the options, it's going to depend on the situation because it's going to be a signal. So the signal is emitted and the callback function that is supposed to be associated with that section is going to be called. And then it's going to so like both the options that show up here and the options that show up for everyone is gonna be dependent on the kind of thing you have. So since it's like the layout's supposed to be a generic thing, I do think it makes a lot of sense to put this like put this as part of the layout because it's always gonna have so it's like a navigation bar. But the challenge is like how do you design the class so that it is dynamic? So the first thing that I was thinking about is obviously like you create a vector or something, and then you make it based on the, or maybe a hash map, and then you just make based on the name. And then when you wanna set the options or change the state, you do it from through functions that work as an interface. But then the question is how do you connect the signals? But I guess so. I'm gonna look into the the editor code first. As here, I'm pretty satisfied with this initial layout. The only thing that's missing is the thing. So maybe I'm gonna look into this, like from the code, because I think it is stable container. Is container. This part is a little bit confusing from the editor as well to understand. Yes, maybe if I searching for operations with sync files. So this is the thing that they create there. So the menu bar is the first one. Then inside of the menu bar you have the title. And then inside of the title you have the main menu is the thing that holds the menu bar goes inside of the title bar. But I think the way that I'm gonna do there is not the same the way that they did here, because I think the way that they did the size of the width of the section there here, it depends on this other stuff that they put here. So they did it based on splits, I think, which like they're either horizontal edge box or vertical box, one of the two, and then they set the values based on this, I think, the positioning. But I think like for the way that I'm doing here, it makes more sense to put it like this. And maybe it makes more sense to put this edge box on top, so I don't have the panel here, but let me see what happens. Obviously, the simplest way I can do it, the better. So I have to write down the structure, and then I have to write down the... But I think for writing down the structure and translating to code, it's probably better to do it upstream, because I can use the two monitors. So but maybe I put like I can create two different classes. So one class would be the one that creates the options here based on the data of the layout. I guess I can make it based on the enum as well, the options. So the question is whether or not it's possible to create the options as independent of what happens. But it is dependent, that's the problem. So yeah, the problem is like the line of separation of the coupling of the classes, because the functionality, whatever shows up here depends on the functionality, but it also makes sense to make it as a standard thing to show up there. So maybe I make this as a separate thing. It's always gonna depend on the thing. So yeah, so I think that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create standard classes. So I'm just gonna put here. So I should translate everything first. So like this is just the initial layout, and then I just translate. So I put a navigation tab here, navbar or something like that. So I'm thinking about creating two different. One of the questions would be, so I think it's probably better to add manually here elements to see how it works, because I guess this is one of the annoying things is because if I have a problem, I have to make sure that I will be able to set the position of the different elements. There's one way that I'm thinking about now is that I make one class separate that is gonna have the information here. So I would create the class as a separate function or as a separate class somewhere else. Then for each layout, I would just introduce that depending on the options there. So I can make it based on a default arguments of the function that creates the layout, based on the enum that selects which kind of navigation bar I'm gonna have. Yeah, but it's kind of complicated. But I think this is probably the best way. And then I would have something separate where it's like a tab thing that keeps track of the docs of the layouts. I guess that would also be dependent on the. So the question would be how to design the class that handles the layouts, the docs. But I think that it doesn't matter that much because it's just a detail. So like even if that's like because it uh, like on the VS Code you can change the position of each thing, but you would go. But I think that this should specific and it depends on what you're gonna do. So I'm gonna have to create a specific class. 'Cause the problem is that it depends on the structure of the class, the way that the docs are gonna work. Just gonna change the shape. Which goes back into the first problem I was thinking about. But I think that this is fine, probably. So I can create the. Maybe I can create an algorithm that traverses the tree and searches for split containers. But I think that's, or maybe panels, and then if I make this standard as, oh, no, can't move here. Oh, it's because I put, it's not allowing me to move anymore. So maybe I have to put inside of this. I think it has to be a child of a control node, probably. I'm not really sure. Yeah, now it works. Control. So I should start the scene with the control. I'm starting with the node because is how the, oh, looks like it messed it up, everything. Or maybe it's because I'm passing both. I was starting with the node because that's how the editor does it. And it looks like, so maybe just easier to start with the panel as the root. As it works. So what I was gonna do here is add manually first. So see the ones that they have here. It's gonna be menu bar. But this is part of another thing there. Yes, sure. This is the part I'm not really sure about. So on the editor, it seems that they don't put anything. So the only thing that makes sense, like either they are setting the values somewhere else on inside of one of these classes, or is being set based on the structure from the other stuff. So like the position of the stuff on the left is determined by the other ones. Either that or it's being set on another class, I think. So this VBox is the one on top there, so they add this stuff here, and this is an HBox container. Oh, so it's adding an HBox inside of the VBox, and then it adds this stuff inside of the HBox. It's the other way around. How do they set the minimum? Maybe it's through this stuff here. It could be through this thing here that the size is set there. It doesn't change anything. Spend. Maybe it's here. Yeah, vertical line. I guess it's because of this. This has to be. Yeah. So, does it allow me to change? I guess that when this is vertically aligned, this already automatically is gonna be. So it's gonna depend on whatever you have inside of this, I think. Or you put the minimum size. So puts this and then puts a pop-up menu as children, and those are gonna be the options. Yeah. So and this one is based on the name. So this will be sing. But I think that for this it's gonna be better if I. So I guess the size is based on the pop-up menus that we put here. Does that make sense? And then I could probably put a margin there if I want, so that it's not right on top of each other. So I would put a margin instead of to wrap this one, so put this one instead of a margin, then put the rest. Maybe let me see if I can change the type of this strip panel. I want to see if it's gonna change anything if I move this strip here. And this should be full. And this full as well. Remove this. Yeah, I think that this probably would work. But maybe it's better to have the other one actually. So I'm gonna see if I put this instead of a control, because the first node I have to create, at least in the way that I have right now, I have to create the first node from I have to create the first node from the editor, and then the other ones are the ones that I would create from from code. So this was being control. Doesn't look like it is. Oh, I guess it's because of this one. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so I would always start with the control on from the editor, and then in the layouts I would create a panel, which is the roots, and then create everything else. So let me think about this. I think that after I create the, so I'm probably gonna put a margin container to wrap the VBox, and then the other I leave this control here. Then I put some more options here. But probably this menu bar I should create from the code. So it's gonna be like, I need to think about, but I'm gonna think about this later. But it's gonna be a class that is gonna be based on the data. Is gonna create the elements that shows up. So it has to be flexible and generic, so that I can always reuse the same class for different things, but then change what is displayed as the options based on the data from outside. That's probably how it's gonna work. So I think it makes sense to. I'm just gonna close this one. I'm gonna close this, then look into the editor one that I created manually, then probably recreate the editor from the code that I have there, and then probably stop streaming, and then I'm gonna just move this stuff to the. I'm gonna try to move to the. Probably I'm gonna think about changing the name first. Then after I change the name, I'm gonna move to the code. Actually, I need to write down the names of the nodes first. So I'm gonna use SkyDraw probably to like this draw the layout of the scene with the names of the structure. then go on the code and recreate that, then change the names of the nodes here, and then do the same on code. But I'm pretty sure that like it is. I'm trying to. Oh yeah, maybe something on the bottom as well. I need. So maybe I should put something else here. But I wonder. So let me see what happens if I put. So I should probably have a VBox in the bottom as well, and then put a minimum Y. Let me see. This I put it based on the minimum. So this would be the same. Yeah, so and I think that's probably so like as I build stuff, I'm gonna try to keep it as simple as possible. So I think that's it's probably I'm trying to think if there is anything. Maybe I should put something else, but I think it doesn't matter to put anything on this side. So what I'm thinking about doing initially is to create this and then put a 3D environment here. The so I have to finish the thing that is kind of the most confusing now is to think about the functionality, like how it's gonna work when I create the scene from code to connect the functionality of everything and what is gonna be. But I guess it's not gonna be that hard because like I can encapsulate the complexity inside of each doc. So yeah, whatever functionality I need is just gonna be is gonna be basically just inheriting from whatever base type the layout creates. No, not the layout creates, because the layout is just gonna be the entry points. It's gonna be inheriting from whatever base type I would use, and then customizing the logic that I need from the class, and then connecting the signals outside with the signal serializer. So that's probably how it's gonna work. Yeah. So I'm gonna be right back. So I'm pretty sure that that's all I need for the first scene that I'm thinking about creating. It's gonna be like an ID like scene. And then after doing this, then I have to study the file system from Godot. So I'm probably gonna use file system from Godot, and then the code edit on the middle, and then put a 3D environment on here, and then. But once it gets to the point, I'll think about more. So the most confusing is the tabs here in the beginning and how to think about the entry points and stuff like that. Also the icon. But it makes more sense to think about this after I create the initial layout from the code because then it's easier to think about. And yeah, I have to write down. This is the other thing I have to do now. So I have to go one by one and then write down all the properties there and the setters and getters to make sure that I'm creating it correctly. But what I'm gonna do now, so I'm gonna open the project that I created the editor. I reproduced the editor layouts with the simple nodes. They use custom nodes, so it's not the same, but I think it's on this one. I basically just put the base type that the custom ones inherit from. Just to have an idea, then after that, I'm just gonna comment out because I changed here so that I was using this function instead of the other one, which is the editor layout. So I'm just gonna go back to using the I already have here, and I'm gonna recreate because last time I deleted the scene that basically is the editor layout from the other project. So I'm gonna compile and then run this again, recreate the scene from the editor layout, and then try to see how they do there and how it works. I'm gonna investigate the properties, and then I have to like look into the code here to see. Basically, because it's easier to get from the code. So this function, for example, to set the anchors, because some of the properties is not obvious which one it is when you change there on the editor. So how it maps to the code. So I think mainly this set anchor here. Also, I changed this, so I haven't seen what happens when I also add these doc slots here. Maybe it will break, so I'm gonna see. This one is just bugging because other stuff. So I'll be right back, and I'm just gonna look into this after I'm back. I guess I'm kind of uncertain about this because I'm not really 100% sure of what's gonna happen if every entry points that based on the way that I'm designing there on the layouts, where like the idea that I have is basically use the panels as the entry points. because the panels allow you to the way that the split container works, as far as I understand, it works based on its children. So whenever you want to create a split, you is the easiest way is to put two panels as the children, and if you want to create more splits inside of that split, you have to create this binary tree, which is basically the way that they did it on the plugin there, where the branches are the splits and the leaves are the panels. So the panels work as entry points, but the thing that I'm not 100% sure is what happens, like if you can expect the same behavior for any node that you want to insert inside of the panel. So I guess, but I think that because on the plugin there, he uses a control node for setting the layout. So I think that you can probably expect the same behavior. And if you can't, then you just encapsulate whatever node you want to put inside of a control. So just have to figure out in the beginning what are the properties to set. So I should probably do it from the editor again, add the code edit there, and then see what properties to set to make sure that the element that the node that I'm going to put there takes the whole space of the layout. Then from that point, I can just think about whatever happens inside of there based on whatever node I put as the entry points. And if I want to put more stuff there, then I can do what I said, which is just encapsulate inside of the control node. So you put the control node that takes the whole space, and then inside of the control node, you combine different nodes to create whatever more like specific layout you want inside of that the dock. So the initial layouts just to set it for setting different placements of docks. And then obviously depending on the scene, if you have other scenes that where just for changing settings, for example, or stuff like that, or like more simple scenes, then I would just create like every time that I create a scene, basically I just put the layouts or the initial phase of the scene on a function. And I guess like this is it is kind of blurry, and it is always like this in the beginning, so it gets easier and easier, I think, the more you do it. But in the beginning it's kind of blurry because it is a line of like function to class. So like the question is like what should you put inside of a class and what should you put inside of functions that you compose different nodes with each other, and then how is that going to work inside of the whole structure of the whole thing. That's the most difficult part, because what's always changing is going to be how the data changes the application, and what always stays the same is the structure. So there's always the line there, and this is just the nature of space and time, as far as I understand. As far as I think right now, the way that I'm thinking, based on other stuff that I studied as well, is that you're always going to have this line, and the line is a multifractal boundary. So like the structure of space and time is a reference frame that has a boundary, like the boundary of your experience is the multifractal geometry of space and time, because time is always conversion. Space obviously changes in relationship to time, and I think like the separation of things is determined by that the rate of change. So the multifractal, I'm not really sure if the multifractal would be essentially is the same idea from the Mandelbrot stats, where what defines the multifractal is the distinction between what's inside of the set and what's outside of the set. And I think it's the same with geometry. What defines the boundary between the geometry is what is perceived to be inside of the set and what's perceived to be outside of the set. And structure of that definition is the nature of space-time. So it's the computation of a network that creates a relative boundary between things, which is the geometrical structure of space and time, because they don't exist. It's just a projection. So what defines the distinction is the frequency of computation. And I think it's the same thing with everything. So like all applications are one application at the end of the day. And what defines the boundary between the applications is the computation of the market economy and the politics that is a consequence of the computation of the market economy. So instead of modeling the application as the application itself and all the other software is going to be a funnel of information. So the more density it has, the more fixed it's going to be, which means that's going to be part of the structure, the multifractal structure. And the more variance it has, the more volatile it's going to be, which means it's going to be part of the data. And what determines this is the instruction set architecture of the hardware, because it's how the network of human beings define the synchronicity of symbols in relationship to the impulses of the environment that creates the distinction between space and time, which is computation, I think. So obviously it's not the same. The stuff that I have here is not the same as the way that it is on the editor, because I couldn't put the classes in the same way because there's a lot of classes that they use that are not registered on class DB, so I can't do unless I changed a bunch of stuff, which would take too much time, I think. So I think just looking at this is not gonna be, it's not gonna allow me to have an accurate representation of how they set the properties of the layout. Yeah, but it looks like they use this VBox. So here I think I changed the, I don't remember really well. Oh, so they use a, yeah, so yeah, this is the reason why I did this way, the other one as well. So they separate the size of a VBox here. I think that this, I don't think that they put, so let's say the main VBox there. So GUI base is the root there, is the panel here. So on the GUI base, they are setting the anchor and then full rectangle. I guess like if you want the any element to take the space of the parent, you set it like this probably. And this is the thing, this would be the main VBox that they have there, but I don't think that they set the values. Oh, here they are setting the flags, vertical flag, to expand. Hmm. Oh, so they do sets here. Separate sets. So they're setting full rectangle and mode means size. Mode means I don't know where is the mode. Here they probably sat there as well as a flag. So here probably I assume that they set this flag here on the other one. So left H split. There's probably that I didn't put on the code there. Or this one I did it manually. So this one I didn't set the values, that's why. So maybe on the other one's more accurate. So it does have here sense. So this one is used to expand there. So what I'm gonna do is just close here and then try to because I changed some things from last time that I created this, it might fuck up the thing there. But I'm gonna try to run this. So compile and then run to recreate the. I'm gonna open from here first to make sure that it is just an empty node. On the other project, then if I'm able to build the layout there, I'm just gonna spend some time looking at it. Then go back to the other one. This is on the types approach. Also, I have to remove from here. So the reason why I was saying that about all this stuff about the space time and stuff like that is because that's how I'm thinking about. I think that the complexity and the challenge of the approach that I'm taking here is going to be on the line because it's always on the line, the complexity, and I think that's the nature of space and time because space-time, I believe on the electromagnetic field model of on the ether model of the universe as far as I think right now. Obviously, I might be wrong about this, and I think nobody knows for sure like how everything works, but I think that it makes a lot more sense to model it like that. So we have the multifractal pattern that defines the universe is the electromagnetic field, which is the relative polarity, like the yin and yang, that has the incrementability of the donut shape and the hourglass shape that creates the funnel to the ether, which is infinite potential. So it's the lowest pressure mediation between the polarity that is not on space and time because it defines space and time because it creates the hologram of the relationship between the polarity that creates the illusion of space and illusion of time because time is the scale and the space is the inertia, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. And the way that I model is that the line is going to be the multifractal, which is the connection between the complex plane and space-time. So I view the imagination as the complex plane, which is the internet, and space-time is like the more solidified version of the imagination, and they are both defined by the boundary, which is the geometry. Because the distinction between things defines the geometry between them, which defines the illusion of separation, because everything is one, but at the same time, everything is many. So the structure of the geometrical shape of space and time is the frequency of the electromagnetic field. And the way that it transforms itself is based on the complex plane, because it's a funnel of information, which is computation, I think. So that means that you're always going to have like the essence of past and future is defined by the computation of the present, which is the frequency of fluctuation from the polarity. So it always goes from left to right and right to left, which is the pendulum swing of politics. And this process is computation. So the complexity of space-time is information that happens as a byproduct of the computation of a network, which is the hologram. So that means that in this situation here, one side of the complexity would be, one side of the polarity would be the rigid structure of the layout, and the other side would be the flexibility of the data. And in between, you have all possible applications because it is a finite state machine that connects the three data structures that represent the field of view of a reference frame, which is the user interface. So if you can think about a tree as a like as a projection, because the tree encapsulates the connection of cause and effect relationships over a reference frame, and that's the scene. So it's a symbol of the vision of uh, the field of experience over a reference frame, and then the application would be the boundary of the scope of different fields of vision, let's say. So it is determined by a finite state machine. So I have a finite state machine that creates three data structures that are fields of visions of cause and effect relationships that creates a field of view. That creates the whole application, and then what determines what's the boundary between an application and the other application is going to be the relative density of the network, the gravitational force of the markets, because the markets are going to shape the product. And this is the problem, I think. I was thinking about this as well before, that I think that I'm not really sure, obviously, if I'm wrong or right about this, but I was thinking that it doesn't matter that much the objective function of a model, and this is the reason why I was saying that what matters is the network, because I was thinking about that. I was thinking about politics and the whole debate that what is happening is that you have an abstraction, which is the markets, that are determining what people discuss about in order to gain more attention, because the markets feed off data and their objective function is profit. So the choice is an illusion, because it doesn't matter which side wins, as long as because the platform always wins, and it wins based on the computation of the relative polarity, which is the discussion. So the objective function of the markets is to gain more data, as much data as possible, so it can use that to increase profits. And I think that this is the fundamental issue, because it doesn't matter as long as you have models that are being built based on the computation of the markets, the gravitational force of the objective function of the markets is going to overtake the gravitational force of the objective function of the model. So, but I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, because it could be possible that you have a model that becomes so powerful inside of the network of the markets that it overtakes the markets, and then it changes the nature of computation based on the flow of information. So, and I think that's what everyone's trying to do with the different models. You create something that basically swallows the internet, because everyone is incentivized to create APIs that are going to use that as a solution to a business. So it's going to capture the markets, and then from that point you have the infrastructure, and then based on the infrastructure is going to be a reflection of the model. But if you do it that way, then the problem is that the behavior of the model becomes a market economy, because even though you have an objective function for the model in the way that it's going to present responses, it's presenting responses in relationship to the demands of the markets. So the underlying objective function of humanity right now is the market economy, which is the abstraction that's running everything, and is running from based on data. So I think that this is the issue. And this is the reason why I think that it's probably the more important thing to think about is how to structure the objective function of the network that connects the models, and not the objective function of the models. But in a way, it is the same thing, because it's just a gradient of information. But I think that this is related to user interfaces, because it's basically the same thing. You can model a human being as a user interface instead of a network of applications that is the collective consciousness. It's basically the same. I was gonna open this. So what defines the user interface is gonna be the market economy in the current incentive structure, because it's gonna shape the GUI elements based on supply and demand. So it has the incentive function, the objective function of getting more data. In order to do that, it's gonna hack your limbic system and to gain more power, because the more power it gains, the more data it can gain. It's like the clip maximizer. The clip, not sure if this clip maximizer, but the stuff that the guy uh, talked about some time ago. So that's basically what's happening, I think. So it's kind of pointless to think about the large language models and try to find the best objective function for the model, because as long as the model is being run through the market economy, the market economy objective functions are gonna overtake the model, because it's gonna shape its structure, because the model is the network that swallows the information, because that's how you gain power. So it's a network problem, I think. Is the both the relationship between the network and the model. And I do think, because of this stuff that I was saying about imagination and space-time, I do think that it's already, like, it can be viewed as an entity. So it's an entity that swallows humans in a way, because it's like an abstraction that nobody can stop and changes behaviors, which is like kind of similar with Ted Kaczynski, what he's saying. Obviously, I don't agree with his methods, but what he was saying makes a lot of sense. That, like, if you really think about it, like, it's an abstraction that is running everything. It's basically supply and demand, and supply and demand is just the limbic system, it's just the animal brain, the limbic system. And companies are like a identity, like, is an abstraction, is a structure that is designed to maximize profits. Maximizing uh, profits is just hacking the limbic system. So the more capable you are of exploiting the vulnerabilities on the human hardware, the more power you gain on the network, because you gain more demand. So, like, everyone is incentivized to turn everyone else into a crack addict, because the more capable you are of doing that, the more power you gain on the network. So it doesn't matter how good the model is, because the objective function is already implicit into its structure, based on the organism that is being created to create the model in the first place, which is a company. So I think this is probably because I changed the pop-up menu settings, setting text. So it might be because of this. Oh, it's because of the tabs, maybe? I'm not sure what's going on. I think it's because of the name, but I think I didn't change anything on the manager class, on the manager function. Oh, so it's complaining that it doesn't find on the scene. So it has on the name, but it's not finding on the scene. Mm. So the way that I created another variable to set the name. So whenever I set the name different than the pattern that I'm using to set names, I set the variable equal to true. So I changed the function here so that it sets the variable to true. So whenever I use set name, it's gonna be true here. So it's gonna get the node name instead of getting the name from the pattern. So here, like it's saying that the cache names have the name, but the tree nodes can't find the. It's not finding the name. So I think it's something happening. So like assume that it probably adds. It adds one time and then for some reason can't set item tags. Oh, it's because of this. So this one is when I was trying to make it so that I could set the label of the pop-up menu without setting the name. So I could use the name pattern. So I guess this is the reason why messing up. So the first time it adds the name to the hash set. So this, and that was the second time. I don't know. It could be because of the other ones. I don't remember why I wasn't putting them here, but it looks like there's a problem with this stuff as well. Oh, it's probably because it's not adding this to the like I'm not adding this to the roots, so they're probably not gonna be they're not being included into the thing. So it's just adding as a child of the other one, but that's weird because it should be it shouldn't matter. Hmm. Let me I'm gonna open from here. And I'm gonna run again here to see if it solves. Because when I add using this function, it should set both of them to the variable here. Sucks. Let me think about this. So I guess it's because of the names. So this is a hash set that contains the names of the nodes on the scene. So the hash set contains the name, but the scene doesn't contain the node. That's what's happening, I think. The hash set contains the name. How is it possible? Hmm. I think for one again, it might solve because it might have broken because of the other way that it was there because it wasn't adding to the scene the first time. But it would be weird because then like how does the hash set have the name? Because the hash set's supposed to come from the scene file. So it should have the so if the hash set has the node name, then it should be able to find the node. That's the thing, it is weird. I guess it's because probably the scene saves the node with a different name, maybe. Yeah, so this happened some time before as well, and it was the same thing. But I'm gonna leave it like this because I do think it makes a lot more sense to put the warning message here, and I do think it makes sense to do it like this. I was thinking about whether or not to make this different, where like check for the node here, but I'm not really sure if that makes sense. Maybe it does make sense, and I should just move there. So I can find the child on top here, and then I do the check based on the tree node. And then I wouldn't need the hash set. Maybe I'll do this later. Yeah, but I think that it is maybe it is better to put like that. 'Cause I think that the reason why I left like this is because I wanted to avoid if this breaks to go into the other condition. I think that's why I did it like this. My mind is kind of foggy today because there's so many things to think about. After the initial phase of creating the layouts in the beginning, like the beginning is very annoying because of the all the variables, the properties and stuff. Because I don't know how the nodes work very well still, and how to think about the structure of the nodes when it comes to the layout and the variables. But the more times I do it, the easier it's gonna become, I think. And also the whole pipeline, I think, is very like it's kind of hard to think about it, the flow of the things. So this is the reason why I draw this stuff here, just to remember myself. So because the goal is to increase the speed of the iteration. So now it seems that it worked. And there are some values that this one is the one that's probably didn't set there, or I set it in the wrong way, or maybe yeah, this is it can be a problem actually. So I guess this is one of the things that I wanted to see. So I guess this is a big issue that I have to think about because I'm pretty sure that I copied the code that I should be setting, but maybe I forgot. Oh no, I think I deleted. I deleted this one. So on the other one, I am setting. So I do think it is correct because this one is working. So I was gonna say like the parts where it's gonna be very annoying is the whenever you have states from the control that it depends on the runtime of the engine because it doesn't cache the value. Then it's gonna be very annoying because I'm gonna have to think about how to make it work. And I think that the tooltip might be one of those cases, but I'm not 100% sure. Because here one of the problems was that it wasn't, but I think it might be something specific to the menu bar and the way that is being set up here, because it doesn't show anything when I hover the mouse. But I think it's just because of the way that they sat there. And I think some of these bars here are supposed to be the vertical ones, or the separation. And also, like, some of this should be for these other ones here as well, probably. Hmm. Oh, there are these ones. So I assume these three are probably for this stuff. Hmm. I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I'm going to go back to the other project, and I'm going to try to. I'm gonna write the structure on ScalaDraw, and then I'm going to recreate the structure from codes and then set different names so it's easier to know the entry points for the docs. It might be better to make it based on an integer and then make the doc name based on the number of the, or create a standard pattern for docs. I think that's probably a good idea. So that's probably what I'm gonna do. So for each doc, I put the like a specific name that has the integer that is gonna allow me to know. There's gonna be, for example, doc1 and then doc2 and so on, and then, or maybe not, because it might be easier to think about it from the position in the same way that they do there on the editor. So like slot left. I'm probably gonna follow this approach here that they did to make it easier to think about in your mind. And then I'm gonna set the names of the nodes with the same name from, or a similar name for the doc. Then I'm gonna update the code to have the same name, and then I'm gonna try to recreate the structure from code, the layout that I created there. And then if that works, what I'm going to do is to see how to do this component here, I think in the beginning. So I'm gonna probably create another class to create this menu bar here. And then I'm gonna make it based on the data. So probably study more the editor to understand how they create, how it works on this tab and how they connect the functionality with other stuff. I guess this is a problem because I'm not. So I'm gonna have to study the editor classes for the docs there. So the main one's gonna be the file system in the beginning, and then I guess like the other parts I'm gonna be able to know only after I start developing the stuff, because the functionality is gonna depend on like what the application is gonna be. So yeah, I have to get first I need to get to that point so that I can get this stuff out of my mind, and then I can focus on the. I am probably gonna try to put some like functionality on this thing here on the button. So I'm just gonna leave probably it's gonna be probably file, and yeah, I guess like I should put like a simple stuff, even though because I think I'm not 100% sure what I'm gonna build, so that's the problem. Is that I have to think about something that is simple to do, just so I can test, so become more clear on my mind how it's gonna be the connection of everything. So it's probably gonna be file instead of sing, and then I can. It's gonna be kind of annoying as well, because I'm probably gonna have to use the same stuff that they do, which is this confirmation dialogues here. So I think when you click on sing and then you click on what like save sing or save as, like this stuff here, I have to see. So the first thing is probably to understand how this works. But I know that this is the class that they have there, so I'm going to either study the class that they have or to change the class so that it's registered on class DB so I can use the same class, which is going to be this file thing. And then I'm going to create something that opens the file, so probably study the file system, system doc, and create the file pop-up menu. Then I'm going to create, just to see how it works. So like an option that's the save or open folder, something like that. So it's going to be, so I'm thinking about creating a class that is going to be based on data. It's going to create the children of the other one, these other ones here. Then on this one is going to have an option that is to open the folder. And after you click, I have to see how to connect the function that is going to open the dialog there, to select the folder, and then to understand what happens after you select the folder. So like how to encode the logic of what happens after you select, because that logic is the one that I think is kind of confusing, because it has to connect with another doc that I put, which is probably going to be the file system doc. Either I'm going to copy the way that they do it, like copy the whole thing, or I'm going to study how they do it and then try to create another class that works in the similar way but for my stuff. But probably it's gonna be the same because I don't see why it would be different, and it's just easier to get the stuff that they created. So I think probably this is a good first go. So then after opening the folder, it's gonna show the folder structure on the file system, on the doc that I created there on the other one. And then I wanna do this obviously from the code to like create the structure. And then I think that after doing that, then I can think about other pages because yeah, the first step I think is better to clarify this connection of the initial layout and how the docs are going to communicate with each other, and how to make sure to structure things in a way that I can cache the connection, the functionality for the connection between different docs and what's going to happen on the whole thing. I think it's probably the best. Then after I do this stuff, then I can focus more on, maybe I will create other scenes in the beginning or the other layouts. Yeah, probably I think it's probably a good idea. So after I do this stuff here, I think it's better to create like a couple of standard layouts based just from the editor, visualize what I think it would be interesting to have, like it's different pages. But I think in the beginning it's probably better to focus on one to see, to test all the possibilities of what kind of components I could put inside of each doc to see how it looks. Because the more I do that, the easier it's going to become to know if there's going to be a problem inserting some kind of elements inside of one of the docs. Yeah, so I think in the beginning it probably makes more sense to create the whole scene. And I'm going to probably incorporate the 3D world, that you can use these containers here to put a 3D world inside of one of the control nodes, which I think is how they do it as well on the editor here when you have the 3D scene. So that's basically what I'm trying to do there on the other one. So it's going to be a file system, then the code doc, and the other one's going to be a 3D world. So I'm going to test different containers from both from the editor and from code. Then once I do this enough times that I think that I understand how it works and that I know that it works from the code, then I'm probably gonna create the other like structures, layout structures for different kinds of pages, and then probably think about names for each one of them, and then create a function that selects which layouts I'm gonna use based on enum from another function. So there's an entry point function that receives an enum that has the option of which layout to use in the beginning. Then you have some switch statements inside, and then you call the function for that layout. So inside of the layout folder there, you get all the layouts, and then for each project, you start the project with the layout entry points, and then that creates the initial structure. Then based on the layouts, I guess another thing I can do is I can create another structure that I keep track of like along with the layouts, I keep track of the names of the entry points of the nodes of the docs. That's probably a good idea, I think. So like for each one, I would return both the roots of the layout and maybe inside of the roots, but inside of the roots wouldn't be very good. So maybe inside of the functions that instead of returning the node, I return another data structure that contains both the root node and a vector that contains the names of the docs, the nodes, yeah, for the entry points. And then I check inside of the vector from outside here if the layout has the entry point or doesn't. And if it does, then I create a subtree that's gonna either a subtree or a component that is gonna be the element that manages that layout. But I do think that for the most part, it's probably gonna be like most of the difference, which is another concern, is of the functionality of each thing is gonna be done inside of the class that I create. So for example, like here would be like a 3D world class that, for example, the graph class most of the difference in functionality would come from the how we structure the graph class, I think, or other components that are gonna go inside of the doc, and then I'll change the functionality from inside of the class to change the behavior. But if it doesn't work like this, then I have to think about, and but it probably will work like this, I think. And I think that there isn't anything that I can do like beforehand because it's gonna depend on each application. So for each application, you have to think about every time you want a new functionality, you have to create another class to implement the functionality, I think. So yeah, I'm gonna do this stuff off stream, and then next time I'm just gonna continue to do this. The initial goal is to create something like a very simplified version of an IDE scene. So see you then.